So, the new season of Monogatari is out.
せーの 兄ちゃん、その歯ブラシを私の尻に突き立てるつもりか
After watching the first episode of Often Monster Season, I've got some stuff to say, so I'm just going to turbo nerd this shit and spray it out into the ether known as the internet. Enjoy! Yeah, I'm going to have to cook a bit for this one, so please be patient. I'm also going to mispronounce everything, so you're going to have to deal with that too. I thought about it for a while, and I figured that there aren't really any words that can do justice as to explain what this show is really about. But I suppose what I'll say is that it's a unique experience. If you asked me to describe the basic premise, I'd say it would be about a boy who goes around helping solve supernatural mysteries involving girls. The key word being helping, as he doesn't really save them at all. Rather, they save themselves. Anyone who's seen the show would know that I've committed a bit of a sin by saying so little about it, but let's press on. Alright, let's start off with a bit of a character refresher so we know we're all up to date. There's 3 main heroines we need to concern ourselves with. So first up, we have Ononoki.
イエーイお兄ちゃんピースピースイエーイイエーイピースピース
今度行ったらぶっ飛ばすからな。
Who's a doll. She's a type of Tsukumagami, which broadly means a tool that's earned its spirit after a long period of time. She was a neglected corpse in her past life, and was resurrected by her master Kaganui, along with a group of other oddity specialists. She can broadly be thought of as having the traits of a zombie in some sense. Next up we have Tsukii. Tsukii is an oddity known as the Shideno bird. It's essentially a monster that's known to give birth to its offspring using the womb of a pregnant mother. Tsukii is completely unaware that this is the case though. In her own mind, Tsukii is still just a human. She's also part of a famous local duo called the Fire Sisters, who are advocates of justice in the town. She can be thought of as having the traits of a phoenix in a broad sense. And then we've got Sengoku, who's an ordinary human schoolgirl who in her current state can just live and die like any other human. She's previously been affected by multiple oddities though. She's currently possessed by a benign oddity known as the slug tofu, which was used to exorcise a serpent god from within her. So now we have our 3 heroines, a zombie, a phoenix, and a human. Let's move on to the plot. Ononoki is currently living in the Araragi household with Tsukii under the guise of being one of her plushies. She's been tasked with overseeing Tsukii and her brother Araragi, as they are considered a potential danger to the oddity ecosystem in the area.
Oh boy, those 2 over there in that house are real dangerous. We better go do something about it. Roke Kaganui. Unwritten rule book. Oh my god, look at this cute plushie. I love it so much.
Oh brother, here we go again. Tsukii makes a U-turn when coming home from school, because she feels like it, and finds her plushie perched up in her nest, licking the lid of an ice cream container gifted to her by Araragi earlier. Ononoki tries and fails to play dead as Tsukii covers her in oil and attempts to set her alight. Ononoki eventually yields and begins talking, but she doesn't inform Tsukii of her true nature. Instead, she dupes Tsukii by appealing to her strong sense of justice. She is one of the Fire Sisters after all. Ononoki goes on to explain that she's a magical girl whose soul was transported from another dimension to defeat a horrible monster. And once her task is complete, her soul will return automatically, reverting her back to an inanimate, ordinary plushie. Ononoki's fabricated story backfires on her real quickly, as Tsukii insists that she helps defeat the horrible monster no matter what, and she won't take no for an answer.
嫌だって言っても嫌がらせのように力になってあげるからね
After convincing Tsukii to go back to school, Ononoki heads over to Sengoku's house, where Sengoku is living a quiet and happy life as a shut-in, aspiring to be a manga artist. Sengoku, being familiar with oddities, and surmising that Ononoki is an agent of justice in league with Tsukihi, she quickly agrees to help Ononoki either way. We then find out that Ononoki chose to go to Sengoku's house to kill two birds with one stone. If Ononoki exercises the slug tofu from Sengoku and defeats it in front of Tsukihi, she can return to playing the role of an inanimate plushie. She instructs Sengoku to make a rough sketch of the slug so that she can exercise it later. While doing so, Ononoki contemplates while Sengoku insists on drawing the slug tofu to the best of her ability, even though it isn't necessary at all. Why would one take the hard path when an easy one is available? They converse some more, and to Ononoki's surprise and befuddlement, Sengoku concludes, saying with a solemn gratitude,
世の中が甘くないことがとても嬉しい。
Next up, we find ourselves in Namashiro Park. With the stage and actors already in set, all we need now is the main set piece. After burying Sengoku's slug drawing in the sandbox beforehand, Ononoki then instructs Tsukihi to spread salt around the area in the hope of her summoning the slug to give her a sense of participation in the whole process, and to satiate her need for justice. Now here is where we run into the meat of the story and things get interesting. In true Nishioisin form, we break out into a long philosophical monologue.
にゃにゃめにゃにゃじゅうにゃにゃとのにゃらびでにゃくにゃくいにゃにゃくにゃにゃはんにゃにゃだいにゃんにゃくにゃらべてにゃがにゃがめ。
But first up, I'll explain Heidegger's philosophy. Keep in mind, I'm just some dickhead on the internet, and I'm only going to give you a broad overview. I'm sure you'll correct me in the comments with what I'm going to get wrong moving forward. Heidegger was a key figure in existential phenomenology, which means he explored the idea that philosophy must begin with an experience that stems from time.
It's time to stop!
And contemplate your very existence.
You are thrown into the world. He called it thrownness, with an identity defined by the situation into which you're born. This also has a component where existence is projected into the future. For example, a person may project themselves towards meaningful possibilities, such as starting a family, or having a fulfilling career.
Or making dumbass anime videos on the internet.
One facet of note is that of human existence as being time-haunted, meaning our existence is fundamentally temporal. We exist and change within the constraints of time. He called it Dasein. This pairs with the concept of being toward death, claiming that, to live an authentic existence, it requires one to acknowledge and confront the inevitability of one's own death. It's through these mechanisms that one can live a life that's truly their own, instead of constantly conforming to societal expectations. There's obviously way more to it, but I think that's all the relevant points we need for now. Now let's follow through with Ononoki's monologue and see how all of this applies to it.
僕はこの時ふと戦国なでこが言っていた言葉の意味にようやくのこと思い至った。
私は世の中が甘くないことがとても嬉しい。
あの発言の根幹にあったのは、そう生きがいってやつなんだろう。何もかもが思い通りの甘やかされ人生じゃ自分が生きているのか、それとも夢を見ているだけなのか、わけがわからなくなってしまう。どんな恵まれた人生を送ろうとも何らかの不満や不安を抱えながらぐちぐち生きるのは単に欲深いからじゃなくって、そういう不安や不安がないと生きてる実感がないからなのかもしれない。だから生きがいを求める、人生に適度な難度を求める。
Sengoku is a typical example of Dasein as Heidegger would have referred to it. One could also say it's the typical human experience. Ononoki is referring to the push and pull involved with thrownness, projection, and authenticity. She's saying that Sengoku has the privilege of being able to project herself forward in the world with the hope of becoming a manga artist in particular. She's thrown into a situation where she needs to do this to find her purpose and to live authentically. However, Ononoki now understands why Sengoku actively chooses to take the difficult path. It's because she's ultimately time-haunted. Sengoku is mortal, and thus must face her ending. She doesn't have all the time in the world to achieve her goal, and she must put in effort to do so before her time is up. Ononoki reflects on this, and says that she doesn't feel this herself, as her experience is different. She is an undead oddity after all. Ononoki then switches gears, and starts thinking about her own experience as an undead entity.
なんてもっともらしく語ったところで、とっくに死んでいる身としちゃ全く理解できない感情なんだけどね。言葉だけなぞっても全然心に入ってこない。心ねえし。
Being an oddity, Ononoki is heavily influenced by those around her. She even mentions this in the opening scene, saying that she must keep up the appearance of being human to maintain a human-like form. But here's the rub. Ononoki is, in essence, a tool created by the specialists, and she has no definable personality or expression with which to convey her emotions. Though it is questionable, as we do get some glimpses of it. For example, when she kicks her legs while enjoying the ice cream at the beginning of the episode. But then again, she may just be mimicking. Now, one could say that she satisfies the criteria of thrownness. As she's thrown into a particular situation as a tool to be used by the specialists. So that gets a check mark there. Ononoki also satisfies the criteria of projection, as she does exist within time and does orient herself towards the future, and she also endeavours to carry out her assigned missions with what appears to be a sense of purpose. But she does not seem to experience being toward death. I think this is perhaps because she was once alive and experienced death, leaving her detached from confrontation with mortality. It's also because she's technically not alive in her current state, though it is clear she understands the concept of having a purpose and being destroyed or ended without fulfilling said purpose. It seems to be on a purely intellectual level only, which I will explore later. But I'll stop here as we get into the weeds of automatons and behaviourism. Even so, I don't think that this invalidates her experience entirely. Do you think Ononoki, being undead, is Dasein? Let me know in the comments. Ononoki then finally shifts her focus to Saki and contemplates her experience as an undying entity.
あいつは無自覚とはいえ、不死身の怪物で、永遠の不死鳥で、人から人へ乗り換えて、人から人を乗り継いで、多分、人類が滅ぶまで人類と寄り添うことになる。そんな高級性を持つ唯一の怪異だ。フェニックスだ。一応、僕は、その時代のことは脳内に全く残っていないとはいえ、人間として生存していた頃がある。だから死ぬとはどういうことで、生きるとはどういうことか、実感できる。生が儚く、死が何もないことを知っている。鬼のお兄ちゃんもキューキスショットも、生死の違いを知っている。でも、不死鳥はどうなんだ。永遠の命なんて欲しくない。俺はたとえ限られた命であっても、人間としての人生を全うしたい。なんて、ヒロイックな自己陶酔だけれど、そんなセリフは、実際永遠の命を持っている奴には、どんな風に響くのだろう。どんなに残酷に、どんなに侮蔑的に、響くのだろう。
Well, this is interesting because Saki is unaware of her own immortality. So this creates an interesting duality from an external viewpoint at least. If we're talking exclusively about Saki's experience, then we could most certainly say she's Dasein, as her experience would be that of a regular human for the most part. However, Monogatari never gives us a glimpse into the experience of the oddity known as the Shideno bird. I mean, can we even count the two of them as having separate experiences? I'm not sure we can, as this is covered later in the episode. Should I jump ahead? Sure, why not? We need to have the question answered first to move on anyway. Ononoki concludes that the Shideno bird can selectively wipe out its experience of time, so to say. That is, it can selectively forget. Now, I thought that was a really cool idea to play with. If you were an immortal being, you would obviously have the ability to heal physical injuries, right? Otherwise, it would be very difficult to live an immortal life if you were all messed up and stuff. Why can't this apply to psychological damage then too?
Emotional damage!
If you experienced a highly traumatic event, that experience would then stick with you, causing you stress and anxiety, making your life difficult. Wouldn't an effective method of healing such wounds be to simply forget the traumatic experience altogether? And so that's what happens. The Shideno bird selectively forgets what it needs to in order to move forward in time with purpose. And this is what the final part of Ononoki's monologue is about. If the Shideno bird, an immortal being, could understand what it means to be Dasein, how would it feel about it? Ononoki describes it as brutal and insulting. I think she is correct in some sense. There's a lot to unpack there, but I will say this. If you did anthropomorphize the experience of the Shideno bird, I think it would be a brutal affront to its existence, as it implies that it has no purpose as it projects itself forward through time. I mean, could you even say it's alive if it lives forever? With the monologue out of the way, we begin a huge bombastic battle with a giant fire-slinging slug monster. Ononoki describes how she's in way over her head as Sengoku's drawing of the slug was too effective, resulting in it being more powerful than she had anticipated. Then, in a flash, and as if by instinct, Tsukihi throws her body into Ononoki, thrusting her aside, sacrificing her own life to save her. As Ononoki fights for her life, she ruminates and intellectualizes her own ending, and how she had fulfilled her baseline duties assigned to her by her master, Kagenui. The only thing left was the pragmatic decision to give up.
いやはや、笑えるものなら練習に値する。とっくの昔に死んでいる死体でも、死ぬのは嫌で、超怖いと。そんな風に感じるなんて。
Then, in an instant, the town's friendly neighbourhood snail god appears and saves the day. Maui Hachikuji. Now she, being a human that died, then lived as a spirit walking the streets for 11 years, then passing on to stack rocks on the shores of hell, then being brought back as a spirit, and then being turned into the town's god. Yeah, there's a lot to say, but I won't, as she's not the focus of this particular story. Please let me know what you think about her in the comments though. Hachikuji defeats the slug by folding the paper from which it was summoned and pops it in her backpack. And that's it. It's sealed away and gone. Problem solved. Meanwhile, Tsukihi has regenerated, completely healing from her wounds, and Ononoki carries her home, reflecting on the situation. She points out that, upon Tsukihi's consciousness being wiped out, Maoi appeared and Deus Ex Machina'd that shit quick smart, as if to imply the Shideno bird was bringing death to those around it while conscious. But this can't be entirely true, as Tsukihi was still able to assert her will, averting the disaster in the end. As a result, Ononoki chooses to alter her stance and her obligations to her master, which was to eliminate the Shideno bird if it was considered an immediate threat. Ononoki puts Tsukihi to bed, spends the night embalming her burns, and perches herself within Tsukihi's nest, pretending to be an inanimate plushie once again. When Tsukihi awakens the next morning, Ononoki is surprised to find that Tsukihi has no recollection of the events of the day before. As I explored earlier, it would seem the Shideno bird selectively wipes its memory as a healing mechanism, just as it does with its immortal body.
あろうことか心の傷さえも完全に癒してのけるのだ。荒らぎ月日は今日も元気はつらつに生きていく。だからこそ荒らぎ月日はいつまで経ってもつくづく学ばず、ことごとく繰り返す。いつまで経っても危うく失敗をし続け、しかも周囲にだけその失敗が堆積する。堆積し、うっ積し、それが新たな火種となる。
And, because of fucking course it does, it ends with a punchline.
私のぬいぐるみがアイスクリームを食べてる。
正義の魔法少女パート2。